There is a political tool that is relatively new to this election campaign: memes, images, videos, or texts that are put on social media and shared rapidly. They're often meant to poke fun at something and elicit a few laughs, but in an election campaign, they also have an impact, or they can also have an impact on the race, especially among young people. Elizabeth Dubois has been tracking their use throughout this campaign. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Communications at the University of Ottawa and a fellow at the Public Policy Forum of Canada. She joins us from Halifax. Hi, Professor Dubois. Great to see you again.
Hello, nice to see you too.
Happy Thanksgiving. Let's start off with just sort of, because it's not just you, it's your class, it's kind of a class project, right? Can you describe, I guess, what the genesis of it is and how you've been conducting the study?
Absolutely. Professor Fenwick McKelvey, who's at Concordia University, started this project in the election called the Great Canadian Encyclopedia of Political Memes. And his class and my class are spending the entire term collecting up political memes from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and analyzing them. So we're working with our students to look at the tone of these memes, the kinds of topics they're going after, and trying to understand a little bit about what that says about the Canadian political discourse in the election.
So more generally speaking, what have you found the overall tone to be like?
The overall tone is very negative. There is a lot of laughs, poking fun, which might be harmless, but then there's also some content which gets to be a little bit hateful, a little bit racist, and pretty negative towards most of the leaders.
Is there any sort of tracking mechanism vis-a-vis Elections Canada or anything like that? I know obviously they track advertising. This is something very different. Is there any sort of, is anyone overseeing it?
Right. So Elections Canada has political advertising rules. This is not political advertising and isn't the kind of content that is easily traced even by the platforms where we see these memes being posted. Often the algorithms that are used to track hate speech, for example, on a platform are text-based and memes are images. And so Elections Canada and the platforms, neither of them are really looking at what this content is in a systematic way.
Do you think that will change eventually?
I suspect that the platforms themselves will continue to update how they uphold their community standards, and so that might shift. Elections Canada isn't mandated to deal with this kind of content because it is free political speech. If there were to be instances where people were paying for memes to be created and distributed, then we'd have to reassess.
Okay, let's get into some of the memes that you and your class studied. Let's start off with this meme that involves Drake. It shows NDP leader, I think we have an image of it, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in a positive light as compared to Justin Trudeau, the leader of the Liberal Party. What kind of percentage, have you been able to analyze, I guess, percentage of memes that are positive on one side versus the other, and what have you found?
So we're still in the data collection phase and analysis, so we don't have strict numbers yet. But what we can say is there is a clear trend towards negativity across the board. The vast majority of memes actually are anti-Trudeau. Not surprising, he's the incumbent. But we see very little positive memes. Singh is one example where we actually are starting to see some of those be generated, but he's the only leader where we're even seeing any sort of consistency in positive content.
Is that a surprise, though? And I just follow up by asking, like, in general, are memes shared because they put someone in a positive light, or they're kind of, they're satirical in a way? I think they're poking fun at, at sort of someone's image, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so memes are often satirical. They're often based on a joke. There is the possibility of positivity in those memes. There's the option of saying, this is good, that is bad, which we do see a little bit in that example of the Drake meme. But the kind of tendency towards negativity in memes and in this election just generally in terms of the political conversations we've been seeing on and offline, the negativity really is dominating.
Okay, let me pull up another one. This one involves Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, who my sisters always said I looked like. It seems to suggest that there isn't too much of a difference between all the major parties. What do you think that suggests? Or what might it indicate for us about the sentiment of the electorate, and particularly the portion of the electorate that would be affected by memes?
Yeah, so this kind of meme is interesting because it is putting many of the leaders kind of on the same level, saying, none of these are great. It's interesting to see who's missing. So Jagmeet Singh and Maxime Bernier are not included in that meme. And so you could ask if this is supposed to be an implicit message of these ones are bad, but there are other options, go think about them. It also, I think, speaks a little bit to the sort of sense of why bother, or the voter apathy that we are constantly worried about in our democratic system, given the declining rates of voting, with the last election, of course, being an exception.
And we've got another meme, this one with two Spidermen. It's sort of highlighting what we just discussed, this idea that there might not be too much of a difference between, in that case, it was parties. In this case, it's specific to leaders. You've got Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer on the top left there and Maxime Bernier on the right, and then the two Spidermans underneath. The insinuation likely that there isn't too much different between them. What are the implications of that one?
Yeah, and so that one, the image of Scheer and Bernier there came from one of the debates, and the meme came out immediately after, as many memes do. They're responding to what's happening in the moment, and it really was building off of what we had heard some of the leaders say in the debate itself when they were responding to both Scheer and Bernier. And so I think what we're seeing here is this continuation of the political discourse gets put forward by parties and by leaders into these more innovative, interesting, different ways of communicating.
So will you be and your class be looking at the memes right until Election Day, and sort of what will your analysis overall be based on? What indicators, over what period, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we started collection in September, and we're going right until the week after the election is over. And what we're looking for at a first pass is the negativity versus positivity in these memes. And then we're digging in a little more deeply into specific memes and some of the groups that are generating these memes to try and understand what kinds of discourses are showing up, what kinds of conversations people are having while using these memes.
How might you be able to, and I imagine it's very difficult, measure the impact? Is it even possible to measure the impact of something like memes?
You know, this is such a new way of communicating in an election. It wasn't even that popular in the last election, though memes certainly did exist. And so we don't have really good measures of this is the impact of a given meme on an electorate. But what we can do is think about the role of memes in that larger media ecosystem and think about what choices of information people have and how that's playing in. And so we aren't going to have quantitative numbers of this is the impact these memes had, but we will be able to tell a more nuanced story about how people get their information in an election.
Are there other jurisdictions in which a similar thing has been studied? Like I remember in the last American election, there were a ton of memes then too. Is there anyone else who has done this kind of thing?
There's a lot of really interesting work on the use of images in campaigns, and that's happened in Canada and in the US and elsewhere. I haven't seen any large-scale projects looking at political memes in specific elections, but there are certainly smaller projects that have sort of laid the groundwork for this one.
All right, I'll leave it there. We look forward to checking back in with you once the project is complete. Thanks, Professor Dubois.
Thank you.
Assistant Professor Elizabeth Dubois. She's an assistant professor, as I mentioned, in the Department of Communications at the University of Ottawa. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.